Hi, I'm Janine, and this is Janine Sews for January 6th, 2020. This is a dual duty vlog post. It is Epiphany today, so Christmas is over, so this is kind of my final Vlogmas post of the year. And it's also my New Year's goals post. So to start off, I am wearing a top that I made last week. This is Quick Sew, 36.58. This has the draped V-line self-faced front. And there is a seam here. And I cannot tell you how pleased I am with myself because I matched this pretty well. I'm quite proud. And the sleeves actually match, not as well, but pretty well. And the sides match too. So I was really thrilled with that. I spent a little bit of extra time, but I'm quite happy because the last time I made this, I didn't even think about matching the pattern on the front. And this time I thought, no, I'm gonna try it. And I'll show you a trick that I used. This may not be helpful, but this was really helpful for me. So I cut the front two pieces separately because it's got this seam down the front. And when I laid out the first piece, I took my Frixion gel erasable pen and I drew some of the pattern lines on. For example, I drew stripes and where some of the floral design was. And then when I laid out the piece on the second side of the fabric, I was able to match things up. In particular, the stripes, but I was also able to make sure that there wasn't going to be an issue with the floral, like something cutting off. Here, there's a little bit of a miss, and then there's a tiny little spot somewhere else. But I'm really happy with how well this turned out. This fabric is a double brushed poly from Sew So English, and I bought it last summer at the ASG National Conference. I believe Sew So English primarily sells online, but I bought this in person, and I would buy this fabric again because I'm quite pleased with it. Double brush poly is very nice for this time of year because it's warm but not too heavy. So that's what I worked on. When did I finish this? I just made it over the weekend, watching football. So the other thing that I did on the weekend is sit down and think about my goals for 2020, my sewing goals. My main life goal is to spend less time online. I use the screen time checker on my Apple devices, and I'm spending well over 2 hours a day online just on those devices. Add to that 8 hours a day in front of a screen at work. And that's too much of my life. It's not good for my head, it's not good for my health, and it means I'm not getting as many things done as I want to do. And there are way more interesting things to do than to scroll mindlessly through news and sports sites. I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook anymore, but I tend to just scroll past stuff that really I'm not gaining anything from. So that's the one big goal. But you're really only interested in my sewing goals. So let's talk about those. So when I first started writing my goals down, I was having a hard time deciding what I wanted to do for next year because I've kind of felt like I backed myself into a corner with lists of projects, and then I'd want to do something else, but oh no, I already said I was going to do this, so I have to do this. So this year, for 2020, I decided that I'm going to not have for my year goals, they're not specific projects generally. Monthly goals, yeah, they'll be specific projects. So for the year, my first goal is to make better use of fabric. So every time I cut out patterns, I have a ton of fabric left. because I tend to buy fabric online without a particular pattern in mind, which means I might have half a yard left, 2/3 of a yard left. Now for cottons, which I don't usually work with, yeah, I can use that to make pet beds. But synthetics, what do you do with it? You can only hang on to so many scraps, thinking I'll use it for something. But what do you use these scraps for if you've got 1/3 of a yard? So I'm going to be much more mindful of how much fabric I buy to limit the amount of scrap that I have. I've got about 4 bags of scrap and I don't know what to do with it, and I hate to throw it in the trash. So I'm gonna try and find places here, maybe schools or someone who will take things, but I just don't want to throw it in the trash. So if I shop better and cut more mindfully, then there'll be less waste. Goal number 2 sounds silly, but I'm gonna admit it. I subscribe to 2 sewing magazines and I don't usually read them. So I'm going to actually read my sewing magazines. There's a lot of good information in them. I subscribe to Threads and to Sew News, and I often will pick up Sew Magazine when I'm at Barnes & Noble or if I'm overseas. And I'm not reading them. And I need to make that kind of a ritual, I think, where when a sewing magazine comes in, I find time, I sit down, I enjoy it, I make note of things so I know where I've seen tips. But that's my second goal. The third one is to master my cover stitch machine. I got the cover stitch 2 years ago, and I'm ashamed to say that I've only really just started playing with it to make sure that my stitches are good. And I just need to set aside at least a day, maybe with some of my fabric scraps, and practice using different threads in the needles, in the looper, different tension settings, pressure foot settings, differential settings, looper settings, to figure out what's best for each fabric so that I can confidently use it when I need to instead of fighting with it. It's not rocket science. It just requires some care and attention. The next project is something I'm quite excited about. In November, I think, I got one of those fitting systems that you use on your dress form to customize it for your shape. And I've been saving it till I got past the Christmas rush. That's probably the next thing I'm gonna do. No, it's not. It's the second thing I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna put that on my dress form and I'll show you how that goes, because this was not a super expensive dress form modification package. So I'm hoping it works, because it sure would be great to trust that when I put things on my dress form, they're actually going to fit me. And I think I like that it's foamy, so I can add and subtract, hopefully subtract everywhere as the year goes on. Then the next project is, or the next goal is to work on hand sewing. I have a ton of embroidery cotton. I have instructions on how to do embroidery, and I do want to do some of that, but I also want to learn how to do hand stitching on garments. So beautiful little pick stitches to add a zipper to a garment, handmade buttonholes, nice hemming, understitching. I think there are times when that's a very Zen-like experience. So it would be good to have those skills. And also, if I'm traveling, I could carry along a little project and work on it on the plane and still get my sewing fix and be doing something worthwhile instead of starting yet another kit, which I seem to do all the time, an embroidery or a crochet or a knitting kit that never goes anywhere. So that's work on hand sewing. Then I have 2 specific projects. The first one is to recover the kitchen chair cushions. About 3 years ago, I bought really cheap IKEA cushions for our kitchen chairs, and I said, I'll recover them. They were $2 each, and I knew that the foam would cost me $2. Well, I've got the fabric. I've had the fabric for 6 months. It's time to recover them. This is the fabric. This is an upholstery fabric from Ballard Designs. Ballard is a mail order furniture store, and they are based in Atlanta, which means they have warehouses here. And last summer, well, they always have great sales, but last summer we went out there and they had that upholstery fabric. I think it was, and it was really cheap. $3, $4, $5 a yard or something. I got 3 yards, and I think that's enough to do 8 chair cushions. I know it's plenty to do 8 chair cushions. So I've actually unpicked one of the cushions, and I'm going to start on that tonight. And then the final thing I have on my list is a French jacket. I'm not a French jacket kind of gal, but when I was at the Sewing Guild's National Conference last summer, I went to a class on making a French jacket by machine. And that kind of intrigued me. And I actually have boucle in the closet. It's not fancy boucle, it's a fabric mark boucle. I've got lining. I have 2 different patterns I can choose from that were actually recommended patterns in this class. So I'm gonna give that a try. I know a lot of people on Instagram do the January French jacket contest. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna do it in my own time. The colors that I have are suitable for spring, summer. So if it takes me a few months, that's fine. But that project will be a challenge, and I get to do, I don't think I have enough fabric, so it's gonna be a challenge to fit the pattern to the fabric that I have, and there's some hand stitching on it. So it seems like it's kind of a good project to work on while I'm trying to develop some of my skills. There'll be no cover stitch on it though. There might be some serger hidden inside, but no cover stitch. So those are my goals for the year, and then there'll be monthly goals as well. So that's the new year. Thank you for following along with me during Vlogmas. I'm sorry I didn't get videos done every day. It's just life gets crazy busy. Even when you don't have kids, life is still busy. All the best for 2020, and I will see you again really soon. Thank you for watching.